New World, released back in 2021 as one of the most hyped modern MMOs in recent history. You take on the role of a sailor who was washed up on the mysterious island of Aeternum where no one can die, which is ironic because of how quickly the game died. Sorry. But that joke right there is exactly the issue New World players have had with me for a while, because I make a lot of fun of how bad the release of New World was. Especially when you compare it to its very lofty expectations, it just fell flat in a lot of ways. Despite all that though, New World players in my comments and on Discord and even in my email have been really nice to me about asking me to play the game in 2024 and give it an honest shot. Because they asked so nicely, and since I am the president of MMORPGs, I mean, just look at this office. You think I could afford this without committing multiple political crimes and violent crimes? I bravely dove into New World, and in under a week, I played over 30 hours of the game. For those of you keeping score at home, that's a lot of hours in not a lot of days. So I can honestly say, yeah, New World's pretty great actually. But it's far from perfect. Let's start at the beginning. Where else should any MMO start if not with character creation? I'll be honest, this character creator didn't exactly blow me away, but it did allow me to make some truly horrible combinations which were fun to play around with, but obviously it's not how I want my character to look forever. Oh, you're gonna stick with that? You're gonna go ahead with that look? Okay, well, I guess just make sure you pick a good name so that Carrot McTuber, I guess idol was taken. You start off in a tutorial section where you get a set of QuickTime events to learn about combat, which is the #1 system in New World that will stick out the most to MMORPG veterans. Combat isn't target-based like in World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV. You actually aim your attacks, dodge, and block in a much more action-based combat system. This combat system separates itself even more from mainstream MMOs by having a third-person over-the-shoulder camera that is used in the other combat-centric games like Fortnite. Not the typical directly behind third-person camera you see not only in most MMORPGs, but RPGs in general. So right off the bat, you're shown that New World is not like other MMORPGs. Do I like that about New World? I don't know, I haven't decided, but does it make me uncomfortable? Absolutely. I'm a creature of habit whose favorite game is a re-release of a game that came out in 2001, so the rest of the tutorial teaches you all about combat before going into some combat and then doing a little bit of parkour before ending off with some combat. But after all that combat and the parkour, sorry, don't want to leave that out, you finally end up joining the other players on Aeternum. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I can't handle my character's haircut. It just looks so untrimmed. I mean, it's just too bad that New World doesn't have something like today's sponsor, Manscaped. This video is brought to you by MANSCAPED.com, the global men's lifestyle brand that is revolutionizing the landscape of men's grooming. Manscaped was kind enough to recently send over the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, and it is amazing. It has so many things. The most exciting one by far is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Electric Trimmer. With the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, they've taken grooming precision to a whole new level with their next-gen dual skin-safe blade heads. The best part is the trimmer blade, so you can get those hairs nice and short, and then come in with the skin-safe blade heads to get it really down to skin level. I mean, this thing had me feeling parts of my skin that I didn't know existed. Probably my favorite part of the lawnmower is honestly the LED light. I don't know how I used to shave my beard without an LED. I'm so much more accurate now, even with my general inaccuracies. And don't go thinking the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the only thing that they'll send you in this performance package, because you'll also get the Weed Whacker 2.0, so I can finally get rid of those really long nose hairs that I've had probably since I was born. But wait, there's more. You get boxers, you get a t-shirt, you get a carrying case because you just got a bunch of new goodies, so you're gonna need to carry them. Head over to manscaped.com and get your hands on the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra today, and when you use my promo code IDLE, you'll get 20% off, plus free international shipping, plus 2 free gifts. Trust me, fellas, your balls will thank you. Wow, I also wish that New World had access to my Patreon, which you should join my Patreon. Link below. You can join for as low as $3, and there's Special surprise coming soon. One thing that's impossible to ignore about New World is just how much it has going on. And I'm not just talking about the combat system, I'm talking about every system it has. It doesn't feel like it was inspired by one MMO, but by like 7 MMOs? For example, after finishing the tutorial, you'll be given your first level of weapon mastery. Every single weapon type in New World has its own talent tree that gives you hotbar abilities, buffs to your attacks, debuffs you can apply to enemies, etc. Every time you kill an enemy with a weapon, you'll gain experience into that tree of weapon mastery. At first I thought this is what they chose to do instead of giving your character an overall level, but it's actually in addition to your character level. Your character level determines your attribute scores, with each level letting you add some points to whichever of the 5 attributes you choose. This is all stuff you're shown in the first few minutes of experiencing New World, and it's a lot, but New World is an extremely rare MMORPG because I feel like it actually did a decent job of teaching me all this. Most MMOs will just throw you into their world and say, hey, figure it out, champ, you're smart, but they forget to account for the fact that I am very stupid. And on the other extreme, you have MMOs that are going to give you extremely hand-holdy tutorials that will just literally blink an arrow for where you have to click so that you don't actually absorb any information, you're just on autopilot the whole time. Sure, I can figure that out, but I'm not learning. New World does a really good job of avoiding both of those things in 2 specific ways. First off is the quests. They do a really good job of introducing you to the core mechanics of the game while still feeling like you're progressing your character. It's like learning without knowing that you're learning. The best kind. But more importantly, the UI. Look at this thing. It's beautiful. I mean, I don't know if other MMOs just don't give a crap about user interfaces, but having a good one makes things so much easier. The map has 1 million icons on it, but it has just the right level of detail where it's easy to see what's going on and consume all of that information without feeling overwhelmed. The attributes screen has little icons on it to tell you which attributes relate to which weapons, and that's just so good. And you can even hover on the icons to learn more. So basically, you get an initial level of detail without having to take any action, and then a finer level of detail without even a click. Wow! And the inventory is just laid out so beautifully, and it's so easy to understand what everything is and where it's gonna go when you pick it up. And if you hover over to the items, it gives you just enough detail to understand what things do without overwhelming you with all the nuance, and it's just so good! Seriously, there are no tutorials that teach you any of this stuff. There's nothing that tells you what attributes are and what they do because it's so easy to figure out. There's nothing that says, hey, press M to open your map and check out where your quest locations are, because it's really easy to figure out. This is such a great way to reduce friction and frustration for new players starting your game, because let's be real, MMO players trying out a new MMO are only gonna last like 1 or 2 hours, and if there's anything in their way of just getting into the flow of the game, they're probably going to uninstall and refund your game. And a good UI avoids overwhelming them or boring them with the tutorial and leaving them frustrated because they don't know how to do something. Another thing I really love is just how amazing this game looks. Graphics are hardly the most important thing in an MMO to me, but they definitely help me get immersed into the game world. It makes me want to walk around and explore, and that's such a hard thing to do in open world games, and especially MMOs. Because, you know, MMO players are obsessed with maximizing efficiency and minimizing time waste. Making traveling a part of your game that players actively want to do is an extremely impressive thing to accomplish. I found it so relaxing and immersive to just walk from quest location to quest location, looking at all the wildlife and resources. It's so great when developers spend time making a world worth exploring instead of just using fast travel systems as a crutch. It would suck if this game heavily relied on fast travel. With such a unique and interesting world, it feels stupid to just use the sword I started with. I don't want to use a sword anyway. Swords are stupid. I want to use something cool like a giant greatsword that makes no sense, or a bow like Legolas, or a fucking gun, I guess? That's right, this game's got guns, baby. Why? Because it was made by Americans for Americans. You got a problem with that? Get a life. You got a life? Get a problem with that. What's that? You don't like guns? Uh-oh, Joe Biden just called and he said that you're a B-word. A big baby. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light. So it turns out I didn't like using guns either. It just kind of felt weird, so Yeah, that's the last time you're ever gonna see me use guns in New World. But exploring all the different weapons was really fun, getting to see how they all work and looking at their different mastery trees. It just went to show how much there is in this game. Making my way from the shores I washed up on and going deeper into the environment, I happened across the first major city in one of the single weirdest parts of New World: proximity chat. Proximity chat is always a dangerous idea. Like, why is there a literal child just talking right now? What's going on? I personally would never let a child be exposed to an MMO. That's a horrible thing to do to them. But proximity chat gets a lot weirder, because apparently in New World, it starts cults of the naked crawling man. I'm not saying there shouldn't be proximity chat, but I'm saying that maybe there shouldn't be proximity chat. I don't think the bad outweighs the good. But with a few hours under my belt and a handful of levels gained, I started to get into a flow. It was like meditation. I was leveling and exploring, and I was having fun. You know what's hard to do? Making leveling in an MMO fun. Even I, a lover of MMOs, have only ever found maybe 2 or 3 games that did leveling in a truly enjoyable way. Obviously, the bread and butter of most MMOs leveling are the quests. New World has a ton of these, with side quests littering the map that will have you traveling the entire world, and a main quest line that keeps you at the appropriate level, so if you don't want to do every single side quest or even any side quest, you should be okay just mainlining the main story. Plus, I found the quests to be pretty fun, ranging from scavenging for supplies, or killing big bad bosses, or looting ghost towns, or parkouring. Listen, I'm gonna talk about the parkouring really quickly, just super quick, just bear with me. New World does a lot of things really well. Why they decided to have parkour in the game and even design some quests specifically around parkour, I don't understand. That seems silly. It's not a platforming game, and if it was, it'd be a bad one. It's so hard to tell when your character can make a jump and when they can't. They don't have a particularly far jump, so you rely on grabbing walls and ceilings when your character is just able to. There's not a button you press to do it. So you're left hoping that when you jump, your character will grab a wall that's way above them, which feels like it shouldn't be possible, but in some cases, it's the only way to get to a different location. So I just don't like it. It's like if Skyrim had jumping puzzles. That would be terrible. Moving in Skyrim is a nightmare. That's why everyone plays a stealth archer. But other than the parkour quest, the other quests are... What's that? Oh my god, no. I think it's a escort quest. Sir, it's been confirmed. We have an escort quest. Does the NPC move at the player's running speed? No, sir, I'm afraid. She walks. My god. What would you like me to do? There's nothing for you to do, son. What has to be done can only be done by me, the president. Wow, really, Amazon? An escort quest? Grow up, you little pieces of dog shit! Continuing here because of max title length, but as I was saying, fuck you, Amazon, this game was... Okay, but actually, other than those 2 quest types, the rest of the quests are actually decent. New World really does a good job of making the early quests feel meaningful, which helps with the motivation. Like, one of the earliest quests you can do has you find one of the sources of the corruption that is taking over the island and turning the immortal people who live there into zombies they call lost. I fought my way to the center, and look who was responsible for all of it. Waffles. I always had a feeling it would be him, a person named after a C-tier breakfast food. Yeah, I'm going to assume they're a criminal every time. Wait, no, sorry, turns out it was this evil priest that was behind it, but I still think Waffles is up to something. Aside from the questing just feeling good, another thing that really works in the favor of New World is the amount of different progression systems they have. I already talked about weapon mastery and your character level, but there's so much more. One of the big ones is territory standing. Like a lot of other MMOs, the map is broken up into zones, and by completing quests and exploring landmarks and killing monsters in a zone, you'll gain standing with the people there. Unlike some other less impressive reputation systems, there are tangible benefits to each level. Things like faster XP gain in the region, lower trading post fees, and even faster standing gain. So as you go around just playing the game, you'll be working on multiple different stats at once, and that just feels good. No matter what you're doing, you're never really wasting time. Oh yeah, there's also the entire crafting and gathering system. Did I not mention the entire crafting and gathering system? Basically, the entire world is covered in harvestable resources like herbs and trees trees and ores, and no, it's not like RuneScape. Why would you say that? RuneScape doesn't have skinning, and New World has skinning. No, it's not like Albion. Why would you say that? All these resources you gather can be refined and crafted into consumable items, weapons, armors, and more. And you guessed it, every single crafting and gathering type comes with its own level. So cutting down a tree gives you experience in logging, but refining those logs gives you experience in woodworking. And using those logs in combination with something else to make a weapon, for example, will give you engineering. I decided that I wanted to get an upgraded bow, so I grinded out all of the resources and levels I needed until I could finally make it. But the coolest part was, even including trading with other players, this was the best bow I could get for a little while. So using the crafting and gathering system and the levels that I had earned, I was able to get a really big benefit. That felt so good. But later on, the weapons and armor I was getting from things like monsters and quest rewards was quickly outpacing what I was getting from crafting and gathering. And eventually, even buying weapons from other players off the trading post became a way better idea than wasting my time gathering these resources. This is an issue I have with a lot of crafting and gathering systems, and not just MMOs, but most RPGs. These games are often at odds with wanting to make PvE and PvP rewarding enough to be worth the effort and skill required to do those things. So crafting systems in most games end up falling by the wayside in favor of other systems. Don't get me wrong, the crafting system still totally has a place in the game, especially when it comes to consumable resources. But I never got that really gratifying feeling I got from making a best-in-slot weapon for myself, and I just wish there was something like that as the game progressed. Eventually, I basically stopped gathering resources and crafting entirely in favor of just buying things from other players and questing to just move on faster with the leveling. But wait, I haven't even told you the best part of New World yet. The variety. Sure, you can quest, but you can also take a break from questing to cut trees, build a camp, pet this dog, do this, play Guitar Hero, do some parkour, or even do an expedition. What's that? You don't know what an expedition is? Let me explain. Expeditions are like dungeons from other MMORPGs. You and a small group of players go into an instance area where you fight through a set of bosses and solve some small puzzles to get unique rewards. It's an extremely fun part of these types of games because it's an easy way to get into group content. The need for only 3 to 5 players and the low stakes of the expedition itself make it a perfect time to actually experience the second M in MMORPG. Multiplayer, a part of these games that a lot of MMOs struggle with. New World actually does a great job of creating what I call natural multiplayer. Natural multiplayer just means overarching game design decisions that will lead to multiplayer instead of smaller scale choices that force it on the players. For example, I only ever discovered my first expedition because there was a main quest line that led to that expedition where I had to go kill the final boss. But this expedition is impossible without at least 3 other players. So this might feel like the exact opposite of natural multiplayer. Unnatural multiplayer. But New World is kind enough to give you a solo option if you feel a little antisocial. But what MMO player would feel antisocial? Obviously, I took the group expedition option because I'm not a little baby boy, I'm a big baby boy. But natural multiplayer doesn't have to mean getting players to group up with each other. It can just be as simple as getting players in the same area so there's chances to do that grouping or to just have social interactions. World of Warcraft Classic's rigid leveling zones do this really well by having a lot of players of a similar level in a handful of hotspots, and New World follows a similar but less rigid system. There's also the way mounts work in New World that is really likely to make players run into each other. Unlike other games, getting your mount at level 25 doesn't just mean you're faster, there's more to it. You'll get a minor speed boost when off-roading with your mount, but the real speed comes from riding on the roads. You'll run and dash much faster if you follow the road, and if you use auto-run, your mount will even follow the road as best it can. Basically, it really wants you to stick to the roads, which I'm a huge fan of because it led to me seeing a lot of other players, both higher and lower level than me. It gave me an opportunity to see what cool mounts they had, what modifications they made to them, and it also just made the world feel truly alive because it wasn't just NPCs NPCs walking around. There's a lot more to like about mounts, like the race system, or the fact that it encourages faster travel instead of fast travel, so you actually get to, experience the world that these devs spend time building. I'm so thankful that mounts came out at release back in 2021 at no extra cost to the players who already bought the game. What? The MMO community and gaming as a whole loves to freak out about microtransactions. And to be fair, they are just outright bad for the games they're added to. I mean, just look at RuneScape's treasure hunter system, which lets players get XP and supplies and even some good gear in exchange for, you guessed it, money. Or how about WoW's level boost, which lets you get to the maximum level in a game you paid for by paying to not play the game. So it's a microtransaction that makes you not play the game, but you paid to play the game, so you're paying to not play the game you paid for. But a different type of exploitative cash grab are called macrotransactions. Macrotransactions. As the name suggests, macrotransactions revolve around bigger transactions. Things like expansions that add whole new worlds of content to the game, but you have to pay for it, even though you're paying a subscription. I have a whole video about why expansions are bad. You should watch it. I don't like them. Maybe it's a hot take. But basically, it locks extremely important pieces of content behind another rather large purchase, $60, $70 in some cases, and the worst part is, the old versions become basically unplayable. To be fair to New World, its first expansion, Rise of the Angry Earth, does not make the base game unplayable at all. But that's mostly because Rise of the Angry Earth didn't add a whole lot of stuff. Despite this expansion coming out 2 years after the release of New World, and it being the perfect opportunity to beef up the endgame that players have been complaining about since the release of New World, this expansion came out with very little new endgame content. Instead, the most important thing to come from Rise of the Angry Earth was the mount system, which I do think is a really great system, but it's a shame to lock it behind a $30 expansion when the expansion itself doesn't add much more than just mounts. And mounts aren't worth $30. A common defense I hear about New World's expansion cost is that New World is buy to play. That means you buy it once and you don't have to pay a subscription fee, kind of like the old Guild Wars model. And I agree, that is objectively a much better model than the subscription fee when it comes to being a consumer. But that doesn't mean it's okay to trot out a half-finished expansion that costs almost as much as the base game. I mean, if it was a small indie dev company, maybe I'd understand, but this is Amazon. Amazon! The reason to build up goodwill with your player base and customers isn't so that you can use it later. It should be to have a healthier relationship between game dev and player. And hey, if you want to be allowed to do more piecemeal content releases, like releasing a dungeon every couple of months or even at a slower pace, then a subscription model probably would have made more sense anyway. And yes, I did pay for the expansion, but that's because I was working. So it's a write-off, and that means it's free. Also, I really like horses. A horse means no fast travel. And you know how I feel about fast travel. Oh my god, it's a real-life horse, right as I was talking about horses. What's that, horsey? I need to stop talking about micro and macro transactions and just get back to talking about the actual game? All right, let me get on top of you first. Hiya! Before I digressed into my hatred of capitalism, I was talking about how much I loved the leveling and questing process in New World, and while that was true for the first 15 hours, something started to change. Well, actually, nothing started to change. The world of Aeternum is massive and beautiful and has tons to discover and do, but the more of the world I explored, the more it all started to feel the same. The individual zones don't feel different enough from one another to make it feel like I've progressed to a truly different area from where I started. The world can be basically broken down into forests, mountainous forests, and spooky graveyards. I hate to keep comparing this game to World of Warcraft, but I'm gonna do it. World of Warcraft Classic's leveling zones are all extremely unique and distinct from one another. You'll go from a forest to a deserted farmland to a snowy mountaintop to a beautiful lake. And yeah, you will go to a spooky graveyard. That's because every MMO has to have a spooky graveyard. Those are the rules. The other rule is that every MMO must have fishing. So just keep that in mind. Every zone has its own personality, and even more importantly, it has its own ecosystem. In New World, you'll end up fighting monsters that are either exactly the same or pretty damn close to monsters you started fighting way back at the beginning of the game. Even when you're several zones removed from the starting zone, you are going to run into the same enemies. The wildlife doesn't even change that much either. You end up running into the same wolves and turkeys and rabbits in every zone. This, along with the setting just looking the same as everywhere else, makes it feel like you're running in place. It's fine if monsters share similar mechanics or quests have you doing basically the same things with a different coat of paint and a slightly different quest text. It's more important to make the leveling grind feel different than it is to actually make it different. Another issue I had with the leveling was how easy it felt. Like, there were very few times, if any, that I felt like I was being challenged and had to bust out any particularly impressive MLG gamer moves. Oh my god, I just realized there's a good chance a lot of you don't know what MLG is. Listen, it should be no surprise that I am not a very good gamer. I'm much better at being average at video games and then making a few jokes so that people are like, bald man, funny. And he's bad at video games. So if I'm not feeling challenged by some of these quest bosses, then I can't imagine how better players than me feel going through it. I'm not saying these bosses should be impossible, but it's fun if you have to take a few tries at a particularly challenging end to a quest line. This is just another part of what made me really start to slow down in my progress as I reached level 40, which is still 25 levels off of the max. But since one of the strengths of New World is its variety, I decided it was time to try out some PvP. With the action combat system of New World being what it is, it's not surprising that PvP is one of the most loved parts of the game. The main system for PvP revolves around the 3 factions: green, orange, and purple. I learned their names at one point, but I forgot them, so for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna stick with the colors. You're able to join one of these factions at level 17 after completing some initiation quests, and once you're in, you can do 2 types of missions to move up in that faction's ranks. That's right, there's yet another progression system. The first kind of mission is the standard PvE mission that will have you go somewhere to collect supplies, kill some bad guys, or even go into an expedition to get some loot. I did a lot of these, and they're a nice way to get some variety from the main quest line. The other missions are PvP missions, which means to complete them, you have to flag yourself for PvP. This means that anyone in the world who is also flagged for PvP and part of a different faction can attack you. In these PvP missions, you have to go to a fort that an enemy faction currently holds to steal stuff from them. And I was really excited to do my first PvP mission. I envisioned myself fighting through hordes of defenders trying desperately to complete my objective. And when the fort I was tasked with infiltrating came into view, I quickly realized no one was there. Not a single person. It was literally easier than the PvE missions I had done before. The reason this fort was empty is because World PvP is only really active during something called influence races. These are set times on the server where factions can gain more influence in a zone by capturing forts and towers, meaning a bunch of players get together at the same time to take part in some really fun World PvP. It also means there's basically no reason to stand AFK at a fort in the off times because you'll just be bored and you'll also be wasting your time. I decided to try and take part in one of these influence races, and let's just say I did pretty good. Oh, my people! Whoa! Other people! Oh no! No, he doesn't see me. He doesn't see me. He doesn't see me. He doesn't see me! I'm invisible! Mission accomplished. They're in the skies! They're in the skies! You think me a fool, but it is you who is the fool that is, and not me. You are the fool. Where are the racists? There they are. Oh, I think I just got a, did I just get a kill? You defeated I killed someone. Ow. Ah, 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 ah. Okay. So I think it goes without saying that PvP is a lot of fun, but you're probably better off going for max level first so you can actually, you know, do something. And there's only one way to get to max level. You gotta get back on that questing treadmill. Luckily for me, one of the quests had me go to something called the PvP Arena, which is a 3v3 PvP combat system that sounds right up my alley. It sounds like it could even be like Albion's 3v3 system, which I loved. So all I had to do was queue up for the arena, and I'd be good to go. Oh my god, I'm so out of shape. Oh god. So I guess, No one uses the PvP arena. And yes, I know this isn't a treadmill, it's all I had though, okay? All of this is to say that this game gets really, really repetitive really, really fast. And I know, blue MMO player complaining about repetitiveness, but there are ways to do grinds correctly and there are ways to do them incorrectly. And having me fight in places that feel like they're the same as the beginning against monsters that are the same as the beginning just isn't a great way to do it. New World is so much more than I thought it was. It has a better world, leveling system, community than I ever gave it credit for. The world of Aeternum was the first MMO world I felt like I could truly get lost and immersed into since Star Wars: The Old Republic's original release, but it leaves a lot to be desired too. You know how house flippers will buy a rundown house and then gut the interior before they remodel it to sell it for a higher price, but the whole time they keep saying that the house has good bones? Because structurally and at its core, the house is well built, it just needs to be filled in. New World, it has good bones, but there's room for so much more, and there should be so much more. It's a really fun game at first, and I can definitely see how people end up investing hundreds of hours. I mean, I genuinely got addicted to this game. It's just not a top tier MMO yet, unless it ends up filling out more of its leveling and adding to its pretty bare bones endgame. This issue is totally fixable. It's not an easy fix, but they have done the hard part. They made an MMO that is fun to play. They made a really cool world and a handful of really cool combat and leveling systems. If they can find ways to diversify content and give existing players reasons to keep going beyond max level, they'll be in a really great spot. But is that ever going to happen? I don't know. I can tell you based on people I talk to in game, they're very pessimistic about the future of New World. Amazon Game Studios is actively working on multiple other projects, including another MMO that is supposed to be coming out soon. It feels like there's a decent chance that if that MMO takes off, that New World will fall by the wayside. I mean, there's a reason you don't see even companies like Blizzard having multiple MMOs, and no, World of Warcraft Retail and World of Warcraft Classic aren't different MMOs. But I genuinely hope that the devoted New World players get what they deserve. That sounds like a threat. I didn't mean that to be a threat. I meant like they get good updates. So is New World worth your money? For 40 bucks, I'd say yeah, you could probably have 40 bucks worth of fun with New World. I just wouldn't go into it expecting it to be your new main MMORPG. It just doesn't scratch that itch in the long run. All I know is that there's a good chance I'm gonna find myself back on New World to finish the max level grind. So hey, if you find yourself on the Lilith server in US East, go ahead and send a friend request to Carrot McTuber. Maybe we can kiss. Welcome to the end of the video. If you've made it this far, what? But since you're here, why don't you leave a comment that says, good job, Idol, this is the worst one yet. And that way people will be like, damn, really? Because there's so many bad ones already. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon supporters. You can support me on Patreon for as low as $3 a month at the link in the description, but it's absolutely not mandatory. All of my patrons' names have been scrolling on the screen for a little while now, but I want to give a special shout out to these people. These are the members of my tier. They're insane and probably stupid. Sorry, guys. Those people are, of course, Kunabazi, Suede Oxford, John Sexum, Paradox, and a hobo with a spork. They're at least decent people, probably, actually, if I'm being honest. But thank you guys so much. And hey, thank you. Oh, they're gone.